Okay, guys, today I'll be talking about William Blake. Starting off with his biography, he was born November 28th in Soho, London, where he also died. He was married to his spouse Catherine Blake. She also died at the same age as him in 1827. He studied his education at Royal Academy of Arts. Talking more about his life, Blake, from a very young age of 4 to 10, claimed that he's seen visions such as full angels in trees, such as God in his window. He was a very unique individual when it came to that kind of stuff. He grew his life into Gothic art, more or less. He actually did do a bunch of romantic works of arts as well, but he mainly focused his works on Gothic. He was very misunderstood by society from his unique poems and his unique way of thinking. He's found admirers, however. His legacy has lived on post-death, especially. We'll talk about that a little bit later. One of his more influential poems being The Lamb. He focused his symbolization on on innocence in this poem. He utilizes the lamb, being the most important and references to innocence in this poem. Here the symbols of child, lamb, and Christ are all assimilated with each other. Like I said, he utilizes innocence in this poem a lot. An historical event that happened throughout Blake's poem career, I would say. In June of 1780, riots broke out in London, incited by the anti-Catholic preaching of Lord George Gordon. Houses were burned, as well as churches and prisons. In result of all this chaos, Blake was inspired to write Europe and America being one of his more influential poems. Blake had many influences. The list goes on, but just to be short and sweet, he influenced a bunch of artists that we know today, such as Bob Dylan, the Beatles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Rolling Stones, all artists we have heard of or have listened to in modern day society. He influenced many of his works, even though some of these artists tried to speculate what he meant through his poems. They used him as an influence in writing their own. Blake was not one to praise God or spirits or nature. However, he chose to break ground in other areas such as Gothic and romance. We can clearly see these breaks in Blake's poetry and art. The Tiger, the Lamb, all of his works seem to not really focus on God and nature, but more, like I said, Gothic and romance, if you would say. Blake's impact here, while he was here on Earth, although his works were not recognized from the beginning, his art was noticed a lot after post-death. I believe he had a hard impact on influencers and artists today. Like I said, a lot of the artists that we know in current day society were influenced by William Blake. Here I am talking about him in 2018, so his legacy sure does live on. He's since became a giant since his death in literary and artistic circles. His visionary approach to art and writing have not only thought of speculations about Blake, meaning they were trying to read into him more, they have inspired a vast array of artists and writers. Like I said, some fun facts about William Blake. He died singing hymns and verses. He sought his death to be a mystery. So that's just one of a fun tidbit about him. He claimed to have visions, like I said, about God and seeing God in his windows, the angels, all the way up until his age of 10. And I believed he stopped having the visions, and that's when he started turning his visions into art. He was married to Sophia Boucher, also known as Sophia Blake, taking his last name in marriage. He wasn't recognized throughout his life until after his death, which is kind of sad, but it's also a great legacy for his family to be known that one of their family members have had a great legacy even after their death. Most of his works are still recognized today and still used by artists and still talked about by many people such as myself. Well, that's all I really have to say about Mr. William Blake. He was a very, very influential artist. He was a very good poet. He was a very good author. He was a very well-rounded person when it came to all of his works. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. It was a pleasure talking about William Blake, and thank you guys so much.